Testing 1, 2. True Normal TV. Welcome, my friends. We're here. Hopefully we're here. We'll see if we're here in just a moment. YouTube has not been very...
That was a journey trying to get on the air tonight.
YouTube has not been very kind to us lately. And we're all over the place. So bear with us for a moment as we've got just versions of the show all over the place. So at least you can hear us. We know you can hear us. Okay, you may not know, you may know, Armor of Truth has received a second strike. We're sitting there with 2 strikes now. It could all end at any moment.
Yeah, please say a prayer for us, guys, because as you know, they could just decide to pull any video whatsoever. So
what happened with our most recent strike on Armor of Truth was a short video where all we did was show the Israeli ambassador to the UN reading from the Hamas charter, which was clearly hate speech, but it's not ours. And so they gave us the strike, and we appealed saying, hey, we just put up a video of what he was saying. It's not our position. Doesn't matter. Reason, evidence, logic, doesn't matter. You have to be on message. Okay, so anyway, I can't watch the stream. For some reason, I can't keep an eye on the stream or the live chat over here, so Summer can.
It's all good.
I don't know what's happening here, so we'll try to get along with this.
People are in the chat. Izzy Boo and Lulu Bell.
Are the people in the chat able to see and hear us?
Well, I'm able to see you.
Okay, I think we can see and hear us. I'll check one more time. Yeah, there I am. Okay, let's get started. So we're talking about the Israeli-Palestine war. To start off with, what was Hamas thinking anyway? They know they have no chance of winning the kind of war they've just started. They have to know that. The Israeli government and military have been very clear that they intend to use full force of their resources to decimate Hamas in Gaza. Specifically, they want to level the place. And there's no question that they certainly can. They have the capability, and they have, of course, the allies that would be willing to do that as well. So it's after you know some points like this, it's a little easier to sympathize with the Israeli side when considering how much restraint Israel has actually shown over the years toward these consistent threats and violence from militant Islamists within Palestine. Now, as Christians, we always want to be on the side of the oppressed, never the oppressor. But it's not always so clear. It's not always clear who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed in the Israel-Palestine conflict. It kind of goes back and forth. Think for a minute about what you would do. What would you do, and how would you feel if the United Nations suddenly designated your hometown as the new homeland of your worst enemy? How might you feel? What might be your reaction? Palestine has a diverse population, various ethnic, religious, and social groups there. There's a population in all of Palestine. As you can see, I'll give you a little map here to look at. You can see the yellow there is considered to be Palestine. The white there is considered to be Israel. And so the whole population of what you see there in the yellow is 5 million. But there's around 2 million. Isn't it more than 2 million?
2.3.
2.3 million people. Down here in the bottom left where you see there, that's the Gaza Strip. You see Egypt down there. That's the Gaza. This is where the kerfuffle went down. This is the 3rd most densely populated area on the planet, the Gaza Strip. Over 2 million people stuck into an area that is, if I can get this right now, 60 miles long by 30 miles wide at its widest point. So I think it's about like, I don't know, Israel's about the size of New Jersey. I don't know what Gaza.
Like Washington, D.C., apparently.
About the size of Washington. So there's 2 million people packed in there. It's one of the most urban areas in the world. All right. The overwhelming majority of the population in Palestine is Arab, with a few minorities, including Armenians and Samaritans. Now, the majority of Palestinians are Sunni Muslims. It matters whether they're Shiite or Sunni. They don't often agree. They agree on one thing. They don't like Jews, and they want them dead. They hate America. Now, there are also, keep this in mind now, there are also a small number of Christians in Palestine. Now, predominantly they are Greek Orthodox, but there are a number of Christians in the area. Many Palestinians live in refugee camps, either in the West Bank or the Gaza Strip. Or there are Palestinians also living in refugee camps in Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. So when they say there is really no Palestinian state, they're right. There are a lot of people who identify as Palestinian today. There are Jordanians, Lebanese, maybe Egyptians who identify as Palestinian. But okay, now here's what's important too. Summer median age in Palestine is
18.
In Palestine, in all of Palestine, those.
Well, I believe in the Gaza
no, that's right.
Strip.
Yeah, she had, Summer had the Gaza number. In Gaza, the median age is like 18. All of Palestine, all of the yellow there, the median age is in the low to mid 20s. But it's an even younger population there in the Gaza Strip. It's mostly fighting age males. But there are families there, children there. Most people in Palestine live in poverty. They're primarily focused on daily survival, especially now. The economic conditions in Palestine are complex, influenced by various factors, including ongoing conflict, like we see here, occupation, and political instability, restrictions on movement and access. In fact, as you look at the Gaza Strip there, you can see that they're enclosed on all sides by nations that are not friendly. There's nowhere to run if you're in there. Unemployment rates are very high there, especially among young people. Now, whenever this has happened before, whenever Hamas has gone across and gone into Israel and attacked with terrorist attacks or whatever it might be, Israel has usually responded in the way we saw early. Fire some rockets into the area, take out some strategic locations. But they've also set a precedent of responding with ground operations into the Gaza Strip to rout out Hamas operatives completely. That looks like what's coming now. They're just getting set up because now they're going to be fighting on Israel's going to be fighting on all of its borders. Down here on the southwest side at the Gaza Strip, up here at the top, you'll have up the top there, off the top would be Lebanon. That's where Hezbollah, the terrorist group Hezbollah, would be concentrated. They're a Lebanese militant Islamist organization. And Israel shouldn't be getting much trouble from Jordan, but they are going to get threats from Syria and Lebanon to the north, and again down here in Gaza. If you see, you can see where the U.S. warships you can see where they would go to protect. Right, they would be protecting right here in the Mediterranean. They would just be cruising around out here just to make sure that no other interested opposing nations would show up there coming off that west coast. So they'll keep that clear. But a lot of problems, a lot of things to think about. Hamas leaders almost certainly considered the possibility that they would have no way to respond to the full onslaught of the Israeli Defense Force, or the full brunt of the military. But they have no reason to believe that they could successfully defend on what they've started now. Such an operation, given the strength of the Israeli military and their allies. So this observation raises the question, what was Hamas thinking? What is their theory to victory here? What does victory look like for them? Well, it's pretty clear. Any death to any Jew is a victory. Death to Americans also, that's a victory. But what were they really thinking? What's driving their actions? Well, Hamas leaders may expect the conflict they've ignited to expand to other Palestinian militias. They may be expecting help. They may have the impression that a lot of this axis, that's what Palestinian militias in Iran and its so-called axis of resistance. Iranian leaders use this term, axis of resistance, to describe their international partner system of state, semi-state, and non-state actors. For example, non-state actors. Palestine is not really a sovereign state. It doesn't meet the four qualifications for a sovereign state. And the United Nations doesn't recognize it as such. At least not yet. They don't recognize it as a member state. So Palestine doesn't have at its disposal the same kind of resources that Israel does if they want to ask for help. Let's say you want to take somebody to court. If you're not a member state of the United Nations, you can't do that. But, Summer, didn't you say that recently they did that?
In 2012, apparently, they are allowing Palestine to start proceedings in an international criminal court against Israel, potentially, if that wasn't the case back then. But from what I've read, they do have that standing as right now, and you do hear a lot of news coverage about the United Nations making statements that Israel is going to be guilty of war crimes.
All right. Well, we'll see if those stick, because they won't. So this coalition that would be behind Hamas, or this very small, it would seem, uprising that came up out of the Gaza Strip last Saturday that has killed close to 1,000 Israelis, civilians, and including soldiers that were on that border too, and some Americans. But this coalition that could come to Hamas's aid would be, as we've said before, Lebanese Hezbollah. All right, that is a group that works alongside and within Syria's Bashar al-Assad regime.
And of course, connections to Iran, which have not been totally cemented, but a lot of speculation there, and certainly they've had help, along the way from Iran.
Yeah, so there's also in the area Yemen's Houthi movement, myriad militias operating in Bahrain, in Iraq, and also other places in Palestine and Syria, all of which are supported financially, materially, and politically by Iran. Okay, that's just the fact. Whether they planned and executed this operation or not, they are the money and they are the power behind Hamas, and certainly behind Hezbollah. Other Iranian-backed Palestinian militias are ready to join the fight too against Israel, because in Palestine, children from the earliest age, children's television, children's books for children, they're indoctrinated from the start to hate Jews, to hate anyone. Let me explain to you what Islamism is. Islamism is political Islam. It's the idea that all nations, especially the ones they're in, should be run, the governments should be theocracies, and they should be theocracies of Islamic law. That's Islamism, just in a nutshell. That's Hamas. They believe that. And especially Hezbollah, they have those beliefs too. That's Islamism. What it is it's Islamic totalitarianism, or Shia totalitarianism. That's really the way to think about it. So that's the kind of enemy that we're talking about here, the enemy to Israel at this time. But what we're here to tell you today is that enemy is coming. We're going to see that enemy here in the United States, most likely. And that would be, coming up. One of the warnings was for tomorrow on Friday the 13th. But given all of its military footprints in Lebanon, Syria, and the West Bank, the axis of resistance is well positioned to intervene if they're called into action. Encircling Israel has been one of the critical motivations for Iran's extensive investment in supporting proxy and partner militias in these locations. Now, Summer, we got a piece, we've got a little bit here, that graphic with the red lines, there they are. There's the graphic. There it is. Okay, check this out. Now, the Institute for the Study of War has done us a solid here and has given us this.
If they do this, then they get that. If they do this, then they get that. This
is the flow chart, the if-then. So, this is, if you cross this line, this is what happens. So, if Iran, if missile attacks are conducted into Israel from Iran, Lebanon, and Yemen, and send fighters from Syria into Israel, then Israel will attack Iran. Okay. If Hezbollah enters the war, then Israel will conduct a ground operation into Gaza. If the Badr organization attacks U.S. military positions, the United States will enter the war. If the Kataib Hezbollah, that's if this branch of Hezbollah, if they attack U.S. military positions, the United States intervenes in the war. And then if this other Shohada group here intervenes in the war, the United States will also intervene. And if the Houthi movement does what they normally do, conducting drone and missile strikes, then the United States intervenes in the war. So there is a good chance of the United States intervening in this war.
And we already are.
Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that Hamas launched this operation on the anniversary of the 1973 Yom Kippur War, which was the deadliest up until last Saturday, that lends credence to the possibility that it expects support from other players in the area. One of the key features of that war was that Egypt's surprise attack heralded a multi-front war. So that's where we see these connections. Secondly, Hamas may have based its current operation, we were asking the question, what were they thinking? Well, they could have been basing this on Iranian leaders thinking about defeating Israel, right? There's always that possibility. They always want to take out Israel.
Well, we also know that Hamas is supported by Iran, Qatar, and Turkey as well.
Right. Major General Hossein Salami, the commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, in August of last year, presented the most explicit articulation from an Iranian official yet on how to destroy Israel. So these are things that have been leading up to today. Third, Hamas may have done this because they were seeking to disrupt the U.S.-led negotiations to normalize ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Right? Running this operation now would upset the dynamics between Israel and Palestine and would throw off all of these talks between Israel and the Saudi Foreign Affairs Ministry. Incidents like Hamas' latest and largest attack to date, they're no longer confined to the immediate area in the Middle East where they occur. Each of these actions now carries the potential to grow into a much larger worldwide phenomenon, with ripple effects that go throughout the Middle East and even beyond, and right on into the United States. Now, here's what we know. Israel, it doesn't seem that Israel can exist alongside Hamas anymore. We're not going to talk to you specifically about Hamas and Israel tonight. We're going to talk to you about what we want to warn you about what's coming in America. And to start that out, we want to build a correlation. Israel can no longer exist alongside Hamas. It's becoming clear. The Western world hasn't seen this kind of barbarity in almost 100 years. And keep this in mind. Now, these groups we're talking about, these Arabs and Persians, these Islamists, we'll call them today, these extremist Muslims, joined the Axis powers in World War I. And the evil that you see coming from Hamas is the kind of evil that was seen at Auschwitz and Treblinka, for example. The only difference between the way the Nazis operated and the way Hamas is operating right now is that the Nazis worked very hard to hide their atrocities. But violent Islamists like Hamas don't mind broadcasting their brutalities live on the internet as it's happening. So that's interesting, because it's the same kind of authoritarianism, totalitarianism seen in Nazi Germany, just in a completely different cultural background. Israel faces a difficult task, but in the nation of Israel's apostasy from God, they have created their own circumstance here of judgment. God was patient for hundreds of years, but now he has hardened the hearts of the leaders of Israel, and they hardly resemble the original. However, this is not only Israel's problem. It has become the problem of Israel's number one ally and partner in crime, the West, specifically the United States. Pro-Palestinian demonstrations supporting Hamas have been staged worldwide with particular zeal in the United States. And we'll show you some clips of that in just a second. But those who marched in the streets, those who signed pro-Hamas student statements, who posted memes online praising Hamas, are not, by and large, neo-Nazis or in any other way known to be anti-Semitic. What they are is left-wing zealots like Black Lives Matter, LGBT activists, the woke grandchildren of radical baby boomer politics, brainwashed by anti-racism, anti-colonialism propaganda. And it shouldn't surprise you. The people who cheer this type of, people who cheer blatant murder, people who cheer barbaric, brutal killings of even children.
Well, what this makes me think of is the Colosseum in Rome. Just like a brutal killing, people just reveling in it in a sense. Yeah. Brutality. It's been vicious, but depending on who you read from, like which sources you read from, you'll get a horror story from the Israeli perspective of a family that was terrorized and how alone they felt waiting for help to come from a father who was a retired military man. Or then on the other side, you'll get a very harrowing depiction about how Gaza is literally being shut down, all supplies cut, and people literally don't know if they're going to survive, if they're even going to be able to reach the outside world. So you're having these horror stories from both sides, very emotional horror stories. And you can see how if you're prone to only follow one particular, the left leaning or the right leaning, you're going to get sucked into this intense emotionalism, and you're going to be provoked. You're going to feel traumatized. So, in large part, that is what they are trying to do. They are trying to divide and conquer. Not to say, and both sides are acting terrible. It's vengeance for vengeance right now. That seems to be the message.
Yeah, genocide for genocide.
And that's not Christian. That is not a Christian way. You can't say you can return evil for evil.
This is Australia, right? This clip here. This
Yes.
is not the West Bank. This is Australia.
Australia.
And you can hear very plainly Allahu Akbar there. You can hear it all over the place. And listen to this. Let's get a look here. You see a lot of folks that look rather Middle Eastern, a lot of them that look very white too. Yeah, right there's a guy in the middle who looks like a pasty white guy. Yeah, plenty of them. So the point being here, people, it's cool, right? It's cool to be the contrarian. It's cool to be on the side of the well, right now it's cool to be on the side of the militant Islamists, right? But what's happening? Do we have other bookmarks there?
We do.
Okay. So there's Australia, and this is former Hamas chief Khalid Mishal has called for global day of jihad in response to, let's go here.
Right, so that's supposed to be them glorifying people being dead.
We must head to the squares and streets of the Arab and Islamic world on Friday, he said. He said, head to the squares and streets of the Arab and Islamic world. All right. It says here, to all scholars who teach jihad, to all who teach and learn, this is a moment for the application. Jihad meaning, some, specifically three kinds of jihad. There's with the pen, there's in yourself. It's like what we would call sanctification. It's fighting against your own sin. And then there would be the jihad that you do with the pen. And then there's jihad with sword. Is that the three kinds, basically?
Yeah.
So it's jihad, the definition?
To keep it under wraps with your feelings internally, and then how you respond externally, and then with the sword.
What's the definition? A war, it's a religious war of duty, right? To for the cause of Islam. So that's what he's talking about here when he says, to all scholars who teach jihad, to all who teach and learn, this is a moment for the application. So this, in his term, you can break it down. This is the time for a holy war, he's saying here. Tribes of Jordan, sons of Jordan, brothers and sisters of Jordan, this is a moment of truth, and the borders are close to you. You all know your responsibility. The video below is a Hamas supporter showing off dead Israelis who appears to be at a protest in the United States, is what we see here. Flaunting pictures of dead people. Happy to do so in the United States, too, because they'll get no repercussions here. we have more.
They should be in the AOT Live bookmark.
Oh, yeah, here's another one. New York Police Department has ordered all cops to report in uniform on Friday after the ex-Hamas chief calls for a global day of jihad.
This one was just kind of funny to me.
Yeah, look out for the armed, religion-indoctrinated radical fundamentalists riding in four-wheel drives with flags flying from the back. They're dangerous, right? And you know what's funny about this, comparing Trump supporters to jihadis.
Well, this leads directly into our story about the FBI and who they're targeting.
Right. Which story is that?
Well, the FBI, we've come to find out that the FBI says that right-wing extremists are the ones that need to be watched and monitored, that those are really the people that are a worry, and they are not looking at terrorists at the moment.
There it is, Global Day of Jihad declared for Friday, and be very careful on Friday. People are saying share this with your family and friends. And this is, do you know about this video here? What was was this New York City?
Yes. Yeah, so burning the Israeli flag.
Which means they'll be happy to burn the American flag too. They don't mind that. That's no big deal. What's interesting though is that
France.
Yeah, there's Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so got the water cannons out, trying to put down pro-Palestine protests. Here's Austria. Police having to retreat from a Hamas positive crowd. And here's this.
Yeah, this is crazy in New York.
A good clip here from the Long Island Expressway. Let me start it over here for you.
Doing a wheelie in the middle of the highway with a Palestinian flag. Scary though. Like if I were experiencing that, I would be really freaked out.
Yeah, that would
freak me out.
Yeah, that'd be pretty uncomfortable for especially somebody who's cruising on the expressway alone. Yeah. So what's interesting though about a lot of the protests that we see going on now in the West, we're bringing our focus back to the United States right now. Like Islam, they too are post-Christian. They're post-Christian, and their morality, is just like the morality of Hamas. It is decidedly pagan, meaning that they do not believe in universal human rights or inherent human dignity. Now, keep in mind, now I'm talking about those in the U.S. now who are what we would typically call the progressives, right? Like, for example, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez came out the other day she was making her statements about the pro-Palestine rally that was going on in Times Square. Well, she was denouncing the pro-Palestine rallies in Times Square. Denouncing them, standing on the side of Israel, which is interesting because AOC is not a junior congresswoman anymore. She's She's been there for a while, so she knows how it works. She realizes that you can't stay in that position unless you show love to Israel. Because if she was going to be consistent to her values and everything else that she proclaims as truth, then she would naturally have to be on the side of those who are the ones who are more oppressed here, right? Those whose opportunities are being taken from them or whatever, right? So we can see a very interesting contradiction in terms. But not even Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or the other people in the other progressives, they're the same. They don't believe in universal human rights or inherent human dignity. They say they do, but they can't. Their worldview doesn't allow for it. They do not believe in the Christian doctrine of Imago Dei. Again, also Hamas, also Hezbollah, also the progressives in the United States. They don't believe in the Christian doctrine that every person is created in the image of God. And they don't believe in the moral imperatives that flow from that reality. They don't believe in objective morality or objective truth. They reject Christian precepts that constitute the basis for Western civilization. The very thing that makes them free enough to have these opinions, they reject. These are the barbarians who reside beyond the gates of the Christian West, Hamas, right? But there are other barbarians right inside our own nation, inside our own borders. And they, like Hamas, will have no problem about, I'll change those graphics up there. It looked like it was getting tough. They will have no problem being hypocritical. They have no problem being inconsistent, right? The only groups that are being consistent to their worldview right now are Hamas, are the militant Islamists. This is their worldview. They believe wholeheartedly and fully in jihad. But just like them, those in our own nation will have no qualms about being inconsistent or hypocrites, or appeals to compassion and mercy will make no difference to them. Just like Hamas and Hezbollah and radical Islamism, they too are very religious. These are the same people, after all, who insist that words are violence and that debates and free speech and even jokes have to be suppressed because they harm. Right? They harm vulnerable and marginalized people. If you say a man cannot become a woman, well, they want you to be fired, silenced, and lose everything. It's the same kind of uprising. If you say we must not castrate and mutilate children in the name of gender ideology, they want your kids to be taken away from you. So confronted by wholesale slaughter of women and children and decapitation of babies by armed men, they respond with a shrug and a meme. They don't care about violence as such, and they simply want to be the ones who wield the power. So don't think that these people are just confused or ignorant. They are pagans. And like the Hamas terrorists, they are championing at the moment, they cannot be reasoned with or accommodated. Now, I'm saying that a lot of these inside the United States now are expressing their support for Israel. That won't last very long. That will stop the instant that there appears to be an uprising in the United States that's pro-Palestine. And then these people will get right back on. They'll serve their base. If it is obvious that Israel and Hamas cannot coexist, then it's equally obvious that these two worlds, the Christian and the pagan, also cannot coexist. We're all going to become one thing or the other, but we cannot be both. We have to recognize this. We need to recognize this struggle for what it is. It is a fundamentally religious struggle between two irreconcilable religious worldviews. There can be no peace between such regimes. Now, many have been calling the Hamas attack Israel's 9/11, but Israel's leaders need to be careful not to make the same mistake America's leaders made in not recognizing the 9/11 attacks as religious at their core. Because when you fail to categorize a threat or an attack properly, you're likely going to fail in your response to prevent another one like it. Remember the infamous words of then President George W. Bush when immediately after the massacre of 3,000 Americans on 9/11, as he stood there surrounded by Islamic leaders who more or less shared the basic worldview of the terrorists, he proclaimed that Islam was a religion of peace and insisted there could be no connection between the killing and the religion that the killers professed. That's absurd. Right? Any consistent Muslim is also going to believe in all three tenets of jihad. That's just consistency. Now, there are an awful lot of inconsistent Muslims in the world. Praise God that there are inconsistent Muslims in the world. It wouldn't be good if there were 2 billion militant jihadis. But once Bush said that, gave that gaffe, Islam is the religion of peace, even more absurdities followed. The State Department flew political scientists to Baghdad to devise an Islamic basis for constitutionalism. Right? Islamism and constitutionalism are their opponents. They're opposite ends of the spectrum. That's why it's so ridiculous to try to set up a constitutional republic in an Islamic state. In Afghanistan, the only thing that's going to happen in an Islamic state is going to be Islamic totalitarianism, Shia totalitarianism. In Afghanistan, we spent decades, billions of dollars, catechizing the Afghani children and young people into gender theory and queer studies. For years, our leaders repeated ad nauseum the fatuous notion that deep down, all people just want to be free. Why? Why would you assume such a thing? It never occurred to our leaders, our own apostate leaders, it never occurred to them that some people would rather have justice, power, or revenge. These things indicated that we had finally severed our ties with our Christian past and stepped firmly, even if without realizing it, into a pagan future. We never considered the notion that a people's relationship with God is the most important thing about them. What a person believes about God is crucial to who they are. It shapes everything about the person. But all such discussion is absent from the public square when it comes to these issues. We bought into the lie that all religions are the same. Democracy and classical liberalism are transferable and can be imposed on any culture at will. And that religious differences are just matters of aesthetics. It's not real. They don't really believe that. What a monstrous lie. And a dangerous lie, too, because now we're learning this more and more every day. These chickens have come home to roost. So the conflict unfolding in the Middle East is fundamentally religious in obvious ways. What is less obvious, because we're a post-Christian people, is that the conflict unfolding in America is equally religious. Hamas and the pagans stand on one side. Christians and the Jews stand on the other. And only one side is going to win. As if religion is not real, it's not serious, it's just window dressing. There's nothing more formative in a human person than his religion. And every person has one. Now, where did we want to go next?
Well, why don't we start with the Reuters article about the former Hamas chief who calls for protests.
All right, there you go. I have more of a background on the area and the religion in the area, but I guess I'll save that for the article. We're working on putting out a long form or a couple different articles about this to help to give you the history and the background of what's going on here. So here's the article.
Yeah, so he's putting out a call to governments and peoples of Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt that they have a big duty to support the Palestinians. Tribes of Jordan, sons of Jordan, brothers and sisters of Jordan, this is the moment of truth, and the borders are close to you. You all know your responsibility. To all scholars who teach jihad, to all who teach and learn, this is a moment for the application of theories. So again, we come to that definition of jihad, a holy war waged on behalf of Islam as a religious duty. Pretty surreal.
Yeah, it says there France was using tear gas to put down their pro-Palestine rally. As Macron calls for calm. So where this brings us to I guess probably the part of our show here that some have found most important for us today to get to, which is it's the most important thing that we need to be thinking about here, is this. You need to know this. This will be the section you want to clip, cut, share, whatever. You need to know this. Hezbollah. Now that's not Hamas. That is Hezbollah would be Lebanon based.
Yeah, Lebanese.
Lebanon based Shiite Islamists. They were inspired by the 1979 Iranian Revolution. So they come out of that ilk, distinctly Persian in their influence. And then Hamas, who we see gathered in Gaza, the southwest now. That is a Sunni Muslim group. We'll get into the differences there. Yeah, we'll get into that later on in the article. But here's what you need to know. Hezbollah, the terrorist organization, has made alliances with drug cartels in Mexico, right? And the drug cartels in Mexico have tremendous influence at the U.S.-Mexico border. And so the two, Hezbollah and the Mexican drug cartels, have shared interest, or they have a common enemy. And that would be you and me. No, it'll be us. Hezbollah is primarily interested in expanding its operational capabilities and reach as far as they can. Especially, they would love to extend it into the United States. On the other hand, Mexican drug cartels benefit from Hezbollah's military expertise, including their tactics and training and weapon systems. It's a symbiotic relationship, and it allows both entities to enhance their capabilities significantly. For example, in a 2010 Tucson Police Department memo indicated that Hezbollah had established a presence in Mexico. That's back in 2010. In 2009, the arrest of Jamal Youssef in New York exposed a significant arsenal of assault rifles, hand grenades, and explosives from Iraq. Now remember, Iraq and Iran share a border there in the mountains, but so it could be from either place, really. But here's what's important about that. The arms that they discovered in New York, they were able to find out from information gathered from the arrest of Jamal Youssef, that the arms were first shipped to Mexico by Hezbollah and the supporters, and then when called for, were smuggled into the U.S. across the border and taken, in this case, to New York. And only God knows where else they've taken them. So imagine, in the last 3 years since the border has been just wide open, imagine how much of this is taking place.
Yeah, can I chime in with a little bit of what I found on Hezbollah?
Yeah, go ahead.
I did find out that in the U.S., Hezbollah has attempted to target the U.S. military and law enforcement. For example, in 2018, 2 Hezbollah operatives plotting attacks in Michigan and New York were arrested. Hezbollah became a transnational and trans-regional organization funded by various resources. Iran provides arms and money for the organization. According to the Department of State's County Reports on Terrorism 2020, Hezbollah receives $700 million annually from Iran. The group, which is not fully sanctioned by EU countries, collects millions of dollars from its loyalists in the United States and Europe. So that's some of the history on them. As well, we know that Hezbollah was formed during Lebanon's 15-year civil war in 1982. The group's influence in Latin America can be traced back to the most recent wave of Arab migration to the region, which coincided with the Lebanese civil war. Currently, an estimated 18 million Latin Americans can trace their ancestry to the Arab region. Hezbollah and Iran both exploit refugee migration by planting numerous dual citizen agents and recruiting sympathizers among Arab and Muslim immigrants on the American continent. Okay, so this is quite a few decades of interaction with the U.S. and with networking throughout Latin America and with Mexico now. And we also, I came upon this information where a cop was talking about the fact that it's widely known in law enforcement that the Mexican cartels and Hezbollah have cooperation amongst themselves. So this is quite alarming because look at the connections, with Iran and all of this and that. So there's definitely cause for alarm.
For over a decade, Hezbollah operatives have been smuggling weapons into the U.S. and providing explosives training to members of Mexican drug cartels. Now, this can be seen. The reason we can say that this has been happening is because of the intelligence. We know who's here. We've seen who's here. But also, you can see the shift in their tactics. You can see over the last few years a shift in the level of brutality of the and the operational tactics of the Mexican cartels. So Mexico now sees more car bombings, something that was more you're more apt to see coming from a group like Hamas, commonly associated with groups like Hezbollah. So this violent Islamist agenda working with Mexican drug cartels now exists as an extensive network of Hezbollah sleeper cells across the United States. What that means is, inside our own borders, there are safe houses, smuggling routes, arsenals or weapon caches, and funding mechanisms to support groups inside our own nation that absolutely want to see us all expire. I have to be careful with that term because that I think that was the phrase that got the short video on Armor of Truth taken down, but it wasn't even our words. Anyway, so this is not just a threat in theory. It's like the piece Summer just read a minute ago where the ex-leader of Hamas said, it's time now to put the theories into practice. This is not just a threat in theory. The operational reach of violent Islamism now extends far beyond the Middle East, even beyond the Mexican border, and it has become a clear and present danger to Americans right now. So the Mexican cartels and Hezbollah have shared this extensive knowledge and experience. For example, digging tunnels. They both are expert at digging tunnels and building underground enclaves. The cartels do it to transport drugs and contraband and human beings. Hezbollah and Hamas, they do it for hiding themselves away from Israeli forces and from the bombs. They get deep underground. And they also dig tunnels for gaining ingress and egress across, in and out of Israel, to try to get out of Palestine and into Israel where they can come up and do damage somewhere. So anyway, to breach the border. So at the U.S. border, the tunnels now serve not only as channels for the cartels and drug trafficking and human trafficking, now the tunnels at the U.S. border serve as channels for smuggling weapons and operatives into the United States, specifically weapons and Hezbollah operatives.
Right, and what we uncovered earlier is that the FBI is busy tracking right-wing extremists, and they're no longer tracking these guys. And you know, we were talking about how that's by design, that they're looking the other way conveniently.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got that point. Let's see where we want to go next.
Well, you can let's look at what you know, they say extremism is.
I had a whole section here about for the churches to try to help the churches prepare.
Okay, that's fine too.
Well, I'll have to skip ahead here. So the point here is that terrorism's not our worst problem. Terrorism from a foreign actor, it's not our worst problem anymore. In America, we have a much worse problem than subversive foreign terrorism. Our law enforcement agencies have turned against us. They've turned against the American people. For example, the FBI, who has historically been the first line of defense in national security against terrorism, both domestic and international. However, now the FBI's focus has shifted toward right-wing extremism, quote unquote, which leaves huge gaps in the monitoring threats from groups like Hezbollah. Law enforcement trainer Keith Graves, you can find at Christian Warrior Training on YouTube. There he is. He says, quote, "To be blunt, I have attended briefings with FBI where they specifically said that Middle Eastern terrorism is not a concern anymore. And the real threat, according to the FBI, is right-wing extremism. And when they describe what right-wing extremism is, they pretty much describe people like you and me. This means that they're not paying any attention to the warning signs. They don't care about what's happening at the border. They don't care what's coming in."
I believe that's on purpose. That's my opinion.
Could be. I mean, it sure looks like it, but how crazy would they have to be to put their own families at risk, you know? Take an FBI agent who has a home near the border or in a border state. Why in the world would he ever go along with something like that, you know?
Well, that's what he gets paid to do that, and
well, I'm sure
they all live in echo chambers, and so they sort of dissociate from what they're actually participating in.
Well, this focus on by the FBI on you and me, it means that the federal government is more concerned about keeping its patriotic citizens down than it is keeping known murderous terrorist organizations like Hezbollah from attacking us. It means that those who genuinely intend to harm Americans and destroy the American way of life are, in some cases, more free to plot against Americans than Americans are free to defend themselves from such plots. It's a crazy world. Things have really shifted. So we must ask whether the federal government cares about protecting American citizens at all. Right-wing extremism, as it's traditionally understood, is, you would think, neo-Nazis. You think anti-government movements. Right? And that's certainly something to keep under control. That affects national security. However, that's not what they mean by right-wing extremism now. And so I've got, here it is. Summer found this earlier today. This is really good. This is from, we found this from Keith Graves as well, Christian Warrior Training on YouTube. He's also got a Substack, Keith Graves. Here's the Substack, just for you. Christian Warrior Training, or it's Keith Graves is his name. If you want to read his articles, they're very good. He is definitely a safety expert. Okay, and if you want to learn how to protect your church from security threats, he's got it here. He's got a nice primer to get started with that. Okay. Now, here we go. Here are the symbols of militia violent extremists. In other words, these are the right-wing extremists. The following symbols are used by anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists, specifically militia violent extremists, MVE, are often found on propaganda, online platforms, memes, merchandise, group logos, flags, tattoos, uniforms. Widespread use of symbols and quotes from American history, especially the Revolutionary War, exists within militant violent extremist movements. Historic and contemporary military themes are common militia violent extremist symbols. The use or sharing of these symbols alone should not independently be considered evidence of MV presence or affiliation, illegal activity, as many individuals use these symbols for their original historic meaning or nonviolent purposes. Well, good luck. Good luck with you if you use this Punisher skull anywhere. Right? These are some of the right. Look at this, the Gadsden flag. Right? If you maybe you have the Gadsden flag, that's the "Don't Tread on Me" symbol there. If you happen to have that in your, I don't know, your avatar on Twitter or something, yeah, the FBI is going to be watching you. What about maybe you got the Betsy Ross flag. Maybe you just like it. Maybe you think it's aesthetically pleasing and you use that somewhere in your phone. Or, well, the FBI is going to be watching you because you're a threat. Anybody, right, if you use this term 2A, that means Second Amendment, right? It says here, militant violent extremists justify their existence with the Second Amendment due to the mention of a well-regulated militia, as well as the right to bear arms. They even have this here, anarcho-capitalism, which are people that I don't necessarily agree with in all points, but they're not extremists. These are people that believe that the market should be free, that there should be no regulation, that the market should just be free to decide that prices should be, that the market should decide what prices are. You're against government regulation, at least extreme government regulation on the economy. But it says here, anarcho-capitalism, or ANCAP, is an ideology held by some MVEs advocating the state be eliminated or minimized and that public services be provided by private companies competing in a free market, represented by a black and yellow flag. And, the Punisher skull here, several variations, they say, are used by 3%ers and Malone Labe. Warrior culture, military themes, with like Spartans, or the concept of Valhalla. That would be what Vikings would consider heaven, Valhalla. And there's this too, the black flag, the black and white or all black American flag. We might call it the gray tone American flag, is used by some to indicate no quarter shall be given. That means that no quarter shall be given basically meant that you wouldn't have to, in the Revolutionary War, you wouldn't have to quarter an enemy soldier. And today, I'm not sure what they think it means, other than you don't have, I don't know what they think it means. But according to them, this is a sign that you're a violent extremist. Not if you're a member of Hezbollah, necessarily. Not if you're someone who's smuggling weapons from Iran through the southern border and into New York City. Certainly those people are not any threat. Other symbols here, oath keepers. These are just other actual militia symbols. And here are some of the events that violent extremists will talk about. Conspiracy theorists, this is, anybody who's questioning what's going on in the nation is pretty much a violent extremist, according to the FBI today. So they talk here about, I'm not going to say the name of these because it's just
I mean,
make
we
the
all
video.
know this, but we wanted you to, we wanted to share these actual documents with you guys just to make it real, like extra real.
Yeah.
So you could see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, maybe we can drop the link to this into the description or the chat or something like that.
Yeah, I dropped the Substack link into the chat and his YouTube channel, and we can put the links to this under the video.
All right. Right, here's the FBI saying that Second Amendment supporters should be are extremists and should be reported. Right, so if you believe the Constitution is true, then you need to be reported. That's the craziness that we're dealing with. Here are some of the headlines. Some were provided earlier. How Hezbollah collaborates with Latin American drug cartels. This is from the
back in 2020.
Right. This is that article you were sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, and another one here. Hezbollah's global networks and Latin American cocaine trade.
Yeah, apparently they're predominantly active in the Middle East, Latin America, and the United States, and they build connections and exploits in communities in Africa as well.
Yeah, Hezbollah has been active for nearly 40 years now, and I think Hamas began in 1987 or 88. And that was when that first Hamas charter came out, the one that we got popped for on the Armor of Truth. Here's another one.
Yeah, it was 87 for Hamas.
All right. Co-opted drug cartels are enemy hybrid warfare operations. And so we see this now going on at the southern border. It's a big deal, but you don't hear a word about that from the media, from the legacy media.
Yeah, all the talk is really about the fentanyl problem.
Yeah.
So,
It's about bringing the drugs in across the border. Look, the fact is probably most of that fentanyl gets into the United States on airplanes. Comes in and ships, comes in through regular shipping channels, right?
Yeah.
There's no need to smuggle it across the southern border. You can just order it online and get it delivered right to your house. All the precursors to make fentanyl, or what they call that, trank dope, and all this xylazine and fentanyl and all that. But anyway, that's another topic. This kind of political maneuvering, playing around with terms like right-wing extremism, associating anybody who believes that the right to bear arms makes you some kind of Trump supporting
some sort of
fascist,
unhinged person.
Yeah, it's a dereliction of duty of our federal government, right? But it's a dereliction of duty that directly endangers American people. It directly endangers you and your family. And because of that, for that reason alone, we could and should probably hold this current government accountable. In fact, this current executive branch should be removed from office. They should be just kicked right out of office for what they've done to the nation. It's just at the southern border alone, with what we know now. The defense of the American homeland has to be done with a balanced approach to ensure that all potential threats are considered rather than singling out one's political opponents for persecution. Knowledge is power, and knowledge can save your life. So you have to make it a point to stay informed about what is happening in your own backyard more than you need to be aware of what's happening, for example, in Israel, the Gaza Strip, or what's happening in Ukraine. Being prepared means constantly assessing security threats and vulnerabilities and keeping policies and procedures for keeping your family or your church family safe must be kept up to date, and you need to ensure the effectiveness of your plan, right? That means that you should coordinate with groups or individuals who have experience in security. Do you know a police officer in your hometown? Do you know some people who do security at all? Right? And it also means that you need to do drills. You need to do these things in your own home. You need to do drills, find out where you can meet in case of an emergency. You need to run simulations. And where it's applicable, you need to have training sessions, right? If you're trying to keep the people in your church or even your home church safe, you need to be able to, you need to have people that are trained to keep a group of people safe. You need to do training sessions. These are the essential components for being safe and secure as an American during a time of threat. And that's what we're in right now. Alertness should be elevated right now. It's not just Christian families and churches that need to be alert right now. The nation, the whole nation must be vigilant because our leaders have sold us out. And they have committed treason against the nation. They are not to be trusted any longer. The Biden administration, the FBI, and others, at this point, I'm not letting Trump off the hook. I'll get to him in just a minute. But the Biden administration specifically, and the FBI for years even before the Biden administration, and other federal agencies that have gone rogue and are acting beyond their powers need to be reined in. For the Christian, vigilance, prayer, and don't leave this out. Vigilance, prayer, and the joy of the Lord. That is how we can glorify God at this time. Not fear. Fear won't get it done. Right? If we're in a spiritual war, we've talked about this before. We have three. Do we remember our three weapons for spiritual warfare? Prayer. It starts with the gospel. The gospel is our first. The weapons of our warfare. They're spiritual, right? They're not physical. So what are those weapons and how do we use them? The gospel. The gospel is the power. Unto salvation for all who will believe. The Jew first and also the Greek. That means anyone that comes along who believes, who God brings into belief. So the gospel is the power, okay? To make us safe. And then it's prayer. The gospel and prayer, and the third one. I've forgotten my third weapon of spiritual warfare. The main two, though, are the gospel and prayer. That means praying for your enemies, blessing your enemies. Praying in this case for the FBI or for our treasonous government, praying for them. The concept here is, the thing to remember is that if you cannot bring yourself to pray for God to bless these enemies of ours, then you will not have the blessing of the Lord resting on your life, because it's a command of ours to do that. It doesn't matter how angry we feel at them. It doesn't matter how wrong we think they are. And the same goes for the nation of Israel right now too. People say stand with Israel no matter what they do. Well, that's crazy. That's not even a little bit biblical. The nation of Israel has turned. They are apostate. They have turned away from God. Now, whether or not they'll be included in the future plans of God, that's debatable, depending on whether you're a postmillennialist or a dispensationalist or whatever. But what we do know is, at the moment, they are not God's covenant people right now. Okay? That would be the church. It says in Scripture that the kingdom will be taken away from Israel and given to a new nation. And that new nation would be the Christian. Would be the Christian church. We've been in the age of that. Now, I'm getting into premillennial dispensationalism and postmillennialism here, and I don't intend to get into that today. What you can take away from this is that Israel is apostate. They have turned from God, and God, for that reason, God has hardened their hearts. Now, this is all biblical. When people say it's biblical, that's what we hear a lot of people saying that today. You stand with Israel because it's biblical. Well, when people say it's biblical, we need to hold them accountable. Where do you see that in Scripture? What do you mean to say it's biblical? We're Psalm 122. Pray for Israel. That's not the same thing as standing with Israel in their sin. We can't co-sign sin. We cannot be a party to sin. But when it comes to at home in America, we can do the work of keeping our nation safe and free ourselves. And in fact, we should. That's the responsibility of a citizen in a constitutional republic. Our collective responsibility is to protect our homes, to protect our churches, to protect our land. So now is the time for Americans to rise to the calling of the moment, right? It's your duty to protect your freedoms. We can farm that out to our military, but when it comes time to defend yourself at home, it is your duty, right? This is the moment where we need to rise to the calling of this moment to protect our freedoms and to teach our youngest to do the same. And we had better get good at that fast if we intend on leaving our children a free nation. All right. Now, what do you have? If you got any more points here for this one?
No, that about wraps it up. We just really wanted to get on the horn and let you guys know that there's a connection between Hezbollah and people that are living inside the borders, and to please be careful, particularly tomorrow and then going forward, because as this war escalates, if it escalates, as it escalates, that's going to become a very real possibility for all of us living in this nation by virtue of the connection between Iran and Hezbollah and Islam. So we wanted to get that message out to you guys and just say, stay diligent and pray for the Palestinian people, pray for Israel, and just be careful out there.
I want to leave you with this note. In light of the government's tendency to exploit crises, which we've talked about with you here a lot, you can see on our Substack. Please join our Substack, Armor of Truth Substack. Summer's article on emergency powers, the emergency on America specifically, the use of emergency powers, governing by emergency, right?
Yeah, which, by the way, remember, Israel is now under their emergency government.
Yeah, that was another thing that we'll have in the article. Taking advantage of catastrophes or crises. In light of the government's tendency to exploit crises like this, whether they're legitimate or manufactured, in light of the government's tendency to capitalize on the heightened emotions or confusion of Americans, right? To capitalize on fear, to extend the reach of the police state. One has to wonder, what crisis is coming? What will the next crisis be? Well, I think we can see very clearly what one real possibility is, and that could be the possibility of a crisis in the United States having to do with violent Islamist, I'll just say violent Muslim terrorists. But they're a very specific branch of Islam, right? We're talking about Islamists. We're talking about Islamists. We're talking about Muslims who are consistent to their holy scriptures, right? It's a simple enough formula that the government uses. First, you create fear. You capitalize on it by seizing power. And then you justify all tyranny in the name of national security. That's the emergency state, right? The emergency state comes before the police state. We're in the emergency state right now, where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness have given way to permanent crisis management. And the constitutionally accountable form of limited government has been kicked aside from the very tyrants our constitutional system was designed to prevent. The government keeps devising new ways to establish itself as the solution to all of our worldly problems. Once the government acquires and uses authoritarian powers, it doesn't give them back easily or ever. As Harvard constitutional law professor Lawrence Tribe recognizes, quote, "The dictatorial hunger for power is insatiable," unquote. In other words, as government grows, liberty decreases. Every crisis since the nation's early beginnings has become an opportunity for the government to expand its reach. Specifically here, we're on Armor of Truth lately. We've been talking to you about the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Movement, what it ultimately did to us. Many good things that came out of it, but the terrible thing that came out of it too was basically the creation of a second constitution, where governing by emergency, governing by decree because things have to be done because democracy's too slow. That's what we got from it. That's the legacy of the civil rights movement. Because racism isn't gone anywhere, has it? No, we're more racist, we're more divided than we've ever been. Each crisis has also been a test to see how far that we, the people, would allow the government to sidestep the Constitution in the name of national security. In other words, they're testing to see how well we've assimilated to their system, their lessons, how compliant we will be to their fear and police state tactics, right? It's a test to see how quickly we will march in lockstep with the government's dictates. And this sets up the Israel-Palestine war right now. It's more specifically Israel versus Hamas at the moment, but it will become more. That provides another opportunity for our treasonous regime to take more advantage of us. It's been a test to see whether the Constitution and our commitment to the immutable principles enshrined in the Bill of Rights could survive a national crisis and an actual state of emergency. Unfortunately, the citizens, we the people, have been failing this particular test for a long time. So you need to know what battle you should be fighting. The powers that be have been pushing our buttons and herding us along like cattle since World War II, at least, starting with the Japanese attacks on Pearl Harbor, which not only propelled the U.S. into World War II, but also unified the American people in their opposition to a common enemy. So that fear of attack by foreign threats, conveniently amplified by the growing military-industrial complex, that gave rise to the Cold War era's Red Scare, promulgated through government propaganda, paranoia, and manipulation. Anti-communist sentiments boiled over into mass hysteria that viewed anyone and everyone as a suspect. Your friends, next door neighbor, your family members, anybody could be a communist subversive. This hysteria, which culminated in hearings before the House Un-American Activities Committee, where hundreds of Americans were called before Congress to testify about their so-called communist affiliations, violating the Constitution again, right? You have the right to free association, to associate with whoever you want in America. But people were intimidated into making false confessions, right? And that's the same situation we have today. It paved the way for the rise of an all-knowing, all-seeing governmental surveillance state. So by the time 9/11 rolled around, all George W. Bush had to do was make the claim that it was terrorists attacking us. And the government then used emergency powers and eventually the USA Patriot Act to expand their powers, to spy, to search, detain, and arrest American citizens in order to keep America safe, right? Barack Obama, with the National Defense Authorization Act, continued George Bush's trend of undermining the Constitution, going so far as to give the military the power to strip Americans of their constitutional rights in this country and label us extremists and arrest and detain us indefinitely without a trial. All in the name of keeping America safe. So despite the fact that the breadth of the military's power to detain American citizens violates not only U.S. law and the Constitution, but also violates international law. But the government has refused to relinquish its powers of detention made possible by the Defense Authorization Act. That's what happens when they get a certain level of power. They don't just give it back. That's what the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was. They had to go into 2 states in the South and change laws that were democratically passed in those states. The federal government said, hey, give us the power to override the Constitution in just this one case, and we'll never do it again because we've got to stamp out racism. How did that work out? Not so well. Good things came from the Civil Rights Act. Don't misunderstand me. But the lasting legacy is this emergency state that we're in now. And then Donald Trump took office. And everything got better, didn't it? No. Donald Trump took office, and what followed was multiple crises. Domestic extremism, COVID-19 pandemic, race wars, civil unrests, etc. All of which made it possible for the government to further expand its powers. And then Sleepy Joe Biden came and made everything, he made every effort to expand the reach of the militarized police state, pledging to hire 87,000 more IRS agents and 100,000 police officers as long as they fit our specific cultural mandate. And allowing the FBI to operate as a standing army inside the nation and to come after people like you and me because they label us as right-wing extremists. What will the next crisis be? Well, we have all the information we need to determine where to be looking. But what you can be sure of is there will be a next crisis. So what should you expect if the government declares another state of emergency, right? What if they institute some kind of nationwide lockdown because of the threat of terrorism now, right? Well, you should expect more of the same, only it'll get worse and worse. More compliance, less resistance, more fear-mongering, mind-control tactics, and less tolerance for those questioning the government's propaganda-driven narratives. Most of all, you should expect more tyranny and less freedom. Given the government's past track record and long anticipated plans for using armed forces to solve domestic, political, and social problems in response to some future crisis, there's every reason to worry about what will come next. In the meantime, if all we do to reclaim our freedoms and regain control over our government is just vote for another puppet of the deep state, then it may be too late by the time the next crisis arises. So don't get distracted by everything else that's going on right now in the argument about should I stand with Israel or what? Follow Christ. Be in your Bible. That will help you understand how to react in all cases. So don't be distracted by everything else that's going on so that you forget that real evil exists in the real world. Whatever the cause of this war, these are acts of evil. Hamas committed acts of evil, and there shouldn't be anybody in the world heralding or celebrating Hamas or Palestine right now. Whenever we hear about brothers and sisters saying, but it's biblical. We stand with Israel no matter what. You have to remind them to show us. Point them to Christ. Point them to the Bible. Psalm 122, verses 6 through 9 say this: pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls and tranquility within your palaces. For the sake of my brothers and my friends, I will now say, may peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your good. Now, all parties involved in this believe that they're right. Can guarantee that. They're all seeking what they believe to be the ultimate good for themselves, or at least to be allowed to seek what is good. So then the question is, what is the ultimate good for mankind? What does every human heart long for? It's not an esoteric answer. Meaning of life is not difficult. The answer to the question is, what is this ultimate good for mankind? Well, according to man's heart, it's life. The answer is life. At the core, we all know our lives are short and our influence here is very small. Everyone is seeking more life. Life is such a precious thing that it's even worth sacrificing other lives for. The difference, and where conflict always begins, is way of life. How to live out this life. What is the right way to live this precious life? What is our purpose in this life? Westminster Shorter Catechism, which was completed in 1647, after the bulk of the Reformation. It has a solid reference for the doctrinal standards of biblical Christianity, and it says that man's first purpose is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever. And we see that in 1 Corinthians 6:20. It says, "For you have been bought with a price, therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's." Well, that's fine for the individual, but what about the world? God created everything out of nothing in order to put His glory on display. God didn't need us. He created for us so that we could experience His glory and declare His perfect justice to the rest of the world. So God's plan of salvation includes individuals and it includes nations. Right? Psalm 86:9 says, "All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before you, O Lord, and shall glorify your name." So the universe is just a backdrop. It's a stage where God's plan of redemption is played out and seen by all. In John 6:40, Jesus says, "For this is the will of my Father, that everyone who sees the Son and believes in Him will have eternal life, and I myself will raise him up on the last day." And then verse 44 says, "No one can come to me unless the Father who sent me draws him, and I will raise him up on the last day." So, salvation for all who belong to Christ, that is God's eternal purpose for creation. And your purpose as one of those followers of Christ is to glorify Him, to worship Him, to glorify Him. Ephesians chapter 1 says that God predestined us to adoption as sons through Jesus Christ to Himself, and that in Him we have redemption through His blood, according to the purpose of Him who works all things according to the counsel of His will. So everything we see happening in the world right now is according to the purpose of Him who works all things according to the counsel of His will. It is God's will to bless the world through Israel. That's what the Bible teaches. If it makes you uncomfortable, I'm sorry. Maybe it should make you uncomfortable, because Israel's overall behavior and their apostasy, their turning from God and their hardened hearts ought to be shocking. Right? That's a proper reaction you're having, to be disgusted by a lot of what you see coming out of both of those areas. God's will is to bless the world through Israel. That is the truth. And Jesus Christ is that blessing. John 4:22 says salvation is from the Jews. Right? And Jesus Christ is that salvation. Isaiah 27:6 says, "In days to come, Jacob, Israel, will take root. Israel will bud and blossom and fill all the world with fruit." So fear God, not man. We're so interested in rooting out conspiracies and labeling this group terrorist or that group as part of the cabal. What if it just so happened that your nation was the leader of the cabal? What if it just so happened that your nation was the world's most dangerous terrorist? If you're an American, that is the reality for you today. Your nation is the leader of the cabal. Your nation is the world's most dangerous terrorist. So before we throw out condemnations left and right, let's check our own hearts first, our own nation first. The purpose of the Great Commission given by Christ to all his followers is not by coercion, but by spiritual conversion. Conversion to truth is never forced at the end of a gun. Therefore, while violence in defense of one's person or private property and even war are concepts present in Scripture, used by God for his purposes, neither the Jews nor Christians possess a divine nod to exact revenge by any means necessary, or to set our own policies according to our own timeline. So keep these points in mind as you see the news over the next few days, and as you're confronted with all kinds of fears and uncertainties. Let me share this with you, folks, before we leave you today. Let me remind you to please, if you would, please take a moment to like this video. What's going on here? I can't get it.
Oh, that's a rather interesting.
That's the wrong guy. Take a moment to like this video and share it. Please leave a comment, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe to True Normal TV. We need you to subscribe. If we could get this channel over 1,000, that would be really great. That would help us out. It would help us have a fully functional alternative to Armor of Truth. By the way, we're shut down on Armor of Truth. We have 2 strikes now. We could lose the whole channel, so pray for Armor of Truth if you feel necessary. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to True Normal TV. Subscribe to Armor of Truth. It's free, and it really does help the channel. Download the Armor of Truth mobile app today. It's 100% free. Make sure you subscribe to Substack to get all of our articles. If you can support AOT financially, every donation or gift makes a difference. Use the AOT mobile app Give tab, or visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or follow the links in the description under this video. What are you waiting for? Download the Armor of Truth mobile app now. My name is Brad, and I'm joined by my talented and precious wife, Summer. Together, we're Armor of Truth, and we're seeking a worldview revolution through God's revelation.
Faith is resistance.
Indeed. All right, my friends. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time. Let me remind you, for those of you who are keeping score, we will not be able to do anything on the Armor of Truth until October the 25th. We're on a 2-week ban over there, and it's just ridiculous. Most ridiculous. How could there are really no standards. They can just shut you down whenever they want to. So I was okay when I saw that we had the strike, because I figured surely that was just the algorithm. After an appeal, they'll see that obviously this was a statement made by someone else. It wasn't our statement. But no, that's not what happened. So we won't be there for a couple weeks, but that's good. This is where the Lord intends for us to be right now, and there's other things when He can focus on for the time being, like articles. We'll be able to get you to focus on writing and putting up more articles. The Tracking Dystopia podcast, we can work on that. We've got plenty of stuff for that. And I'm looking forward to and feeling convicted about getting you the next study of James. So we'll be working on that. Anything?
No, guys, if you would like to have a free Bible and some tracts shipped out to you and you're living in the continental U.S., please email us at hello@armoroftruth.net. We're very happy to send that out to you. Again, it's a free Bible and KJV and some tracts, some really awesome tracts. So don't be shy about that. Even if you've gotten one in the past, maybe you want to get one for a friend or something like that, or maybe your copy is being, tethered and you just need a new one. So definitely hit us up if you'd like to have a free Bible.
There it is. There's the old school. There you go. Free Bible. Email us at hello@armoroftruth.net and let us know. You'll need to make sure you give us your physical mailing address.
Yes.
When you do that.
And we won't sell that or anything, so don't worry.
No, it's not going anywhere. And also, here's another one too, folks. If you, that's not that one. Not that one. I wanted to give you this one. I wanted to give you our address. Here we go. If you'd like to support us, and you're just someone who's thinking, look, man, I would just like to send in cash. I'd like to keep it on the down low. I don't want any whatever. Or you want to send us a letter. You want to send us a complaint, something written. Or you want to send us a book we need to read. If you want to communicate with us by snail mail, this is the way you can do it. You can reach us physically at Armor of Truth, P.O. Box 729, Hudson, North Carolina. That's North Kakalaki to you. That's North Kakalaka to all y'all out there. Armor of Truth, P.O. Box 729, Hudson, NC 28638. Send us a letter. We really do like to see things in that box. It costs us about $400 a year, so it's kind of nice to see when people send us something comes in there other than bills and bad news. All right. Make sure you subscribe to True Normal TV. Go ahead and do that now if you haven't. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe to True Normal TV. Let's get this thing, because we're going to have to focus over here for a while. We'll try to build this channel up over the next couple weeks. We've done a really good job over the past month on Armor of Truth. We got our views up over 1 million.
Yeah, finally.
And that was
through the shorts.
That took 4 years.
The shorts really helped us, but then the short is what got us the strike this time. I mean,
we had about 800,000 views in all about a month and a half ago. And then we figured out how to use the shorts to get the channel more exposure. And over the last month and a half, we've had over 150,000. Right, because we've gone over 1 million views. It doesn't show on our About section, but I got an alert from YouTube saying that we got over 1 million. So I don't think
it's those weird Jedi mind tricks that they play with us.
Anyway, the point is we did really well over the past month and a half with some of these shorts. Some of them getting like 50,000 views, and so if we can get our live shows to do that, we'd be set. We'd be pretty safe here, but the Lord wants us to struggle through it right now. He wants to teach us as we go. So that's all for now, my friends. Thank you. Please subscribe, like, thumbs up, email us, hello@armoroftruth.net. And you can contact us also. P.O. Box 729, Hudson, North Carolina. Summer?
That's it.
All right, God bless you.
That's all she wrote.
We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
That's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel. And log on. armoroftruth.net.